Thank you very much for joining us once again today and welcome back. What we are discussing today, we are discussing dispelling misconception about the tax on free zone businesses. I think everything is very fine. Okay. We have already spoken so many times on the tax on free zone businesses, but still people have a lot of questions and they have a question, but whenever they are asking this question, then I have decided to have one more webinar on the free zones only. So what sort of misconceptions people have in the market? There are different misconceptions. Like I just wanted to tell you, some people, they believe that the corporate tax is not applicable to the free zone businesses. A lot of people, if you are in the market, you are asking from the people, they are asking, oh, corporate tax, this is not applicable on the free zone businesses. They are not subject to corporate tax. This is one of the biggest misconception in the market. That whenever we are asking them, no, corporate tax is applicable on the free zone businesses as well, then they are asking, what is the reason of sitting? What is the reason? What is the benefits of sitting in the free zone if the corporate tax is applicable on the free zone businesses as well? So this is the first misconception. Second, people believe that their taxable income up to 375,000 will be 0%, even they are qualifying for free zone person. Any income beyond that, it will be subject to tax at 9%. A lot of people believe this as well, which is another misconception. You will find so many people in the market, they're asking if their income is less than 3 million and businesses are exempt. Qualifying free zone person, if their income is less than 3 million, people believe that they will be able to enjoy the small business relief. That's where they are assuming they will not be subject to corporate tax by the end of December 2026. Another thing is, a lot of people believe that they will be subject to corporate tax, but they don't know which of their income will be straightforward subject to tax at 9%. Then what the business needs to do become a qualifying free zone person? Another question. They're asking, some people are asking how they can become a qualifying free zone person, how they can enjoy the 0% corporate tax relief, how they can avoid the tax, how they can plan like that they need to pay the minimum tax, they need to optimize the tax. This is another misconception. Another misconception, people are a bit worried. They're asking which income needs to be calculated or included while calculating the de minimis 5%. They don't exactly requirement. Okay, which income needs to be income? What should be in the nominator? What should be in the denominator? They don't know exactly which income in the nominator, which income should be in the denominator as well. Another question people are asking, which free zones are considered a designated zone for the corporate tax? Not adequate substance, if they're not maintaining any adequate substance, like I met so many people there, they have a business in the free zone, they are doing third port shipment, they are not even based in the UAE, they are based out of the UAE somewhere else. Now they are asking, they are in the free zone, goods are not coming into the UAE, they will not be subject to corporate tax. These are the very basic questions. Very honestly, we have already spoken so many times about these questions. We are asking them, no, corporate tax is a straightforward different thing. This is nothing to do with the VAT. Corporate tax is a separate standalone regulation, or we need to comply it. But still, people have, these are the very basic questions. There are so many other questions related to this as well. These are such a basic questions, as I mentioned, people are asking on day-to-day basis. So as I mentioned, I decided to have one more webinar on this, and we'll try to address all these questions. Just let's start. So first of all, you need to keep in mind that the qualifying free zone person, only the juridical person can become a qualifying free zone person. There are two types of persons. One are the natural persons, second are the juridical person. Natural person means they don't have any legal personality, or there is no difference in between the individual and the business, like sole establishment. There's no difference in between the individual. There's no difference in between individual and sole establishment. This is the one party. So there's a no difference. Means the business doesn't have a separate legal personality. These are the natural person. Other than juridical person, they have a separate legal personality. We have already discussed so many times. This separate legal personality means LLC, LLP, public joint stock company. This company is itself different from the owners. So the natural person, even they are within the free zone, even they are out of the free zone on the mainland. For both of the cases, both of the situations, either in the free zone, either out of the free zone on the mainland, the corporate tax treatment is same. You just keep in mind. Now, what is the corporate tax treatment? The corporate tax treatment is up to 1 million dirham if their revenue in the Gregorian calendar year is up to 1 million dirham. They are exempt from the corporate tax. I'm speaking only about the natural person. I'm not asking about the juridical person. If their revenue, when I'm asking gross revenue, it includes sale proceeds from the businesses revenue all together. If this is up to 1 million dirham in the Gregorian calendar year, so either they are in the free zone, either they are out of the free zone on the mainland. In both of the cases, treatment is same. In the revenue is up to 1 million dirham, they are exempt from the corporate tax. They are not liable to register for corporate tax. And if the revenue is more than 1 million, 1 million to 3 million, natural persons, they can enjoy small business relief. If the revenue is up to 1 million to 3 million and they have never ever crossed the revenue more than 3 million in any current or previous tax period, then they can enjoy the small business relief. If the revenue is more than 3 million, then they are liable to register up to 375,000, 0% corporate tax. Beyond that, on the taxable income, 9% tax will be applicable. What I'm trying to highlight basically, two things. First, for the natural person, either they are in the free zone, either they are on the mainland. Tax treatment is same. Second thing, this natural person, there are no difference in between the natural person and their business. This is the same one person basically. There no business that doesn't have any legal personality. Examples we have already discussed so many times, like sole establishment, unincorporated partnership, people working as a freelancer. These are some examples of the natural person. So for discussion purposes, I am keeping natural person on the side for the time being. We have already concluded tax treatment is same, and the natural person cannot become a qualifying for reason person. Qualifying for reason person, only the juridical persons can become a qualifying for reason person. Now discussing the juridical person. Juridical person, there is a possibility that juridical persons are in the free zone and juridical persons are incorporated out of the free zone on the mainland. If the juridical persons are incorporated within the free zone, then the guide says by default, it will be presumed every juridical person is a qualifying free zone person. It will be assumed. Now the question was basically, people were asking how to become a qualifying free zone person. They have given the answer in the guide. They said it will be presumed deemed qualifying free zone person. Every juridical person which is registered within the free zone, that juridical persons is a deemed qualifying free zone person. Deemed qualifying free zone person. Now, what are the examples of the juridical person I have given? LLC, LLP, public joint stock company. Now, the juridical person, there is a possibility the juridical persons are incorporated within the free zone and juridical persons are incorporated out of the free zone on the mainland. If the juridical persons are incorporated on the mainland, they cannot become a qualifying free zone person. The juridical persons incorporated only in the free zone, they can become a qualifying free zone person. So this confusion is clear right now that the juridical persons, or another word, let me rephrase, the businesses which are registered in the free zone and those are not natural persons, sole establishment, unincorporated partnership or freelancer, remaining will be the juridical person, and only those juridical persons will be considered a deemed qualifying free zone person. So this is very clear right now. So only juridical person incorporated within the free zone will be deemed as a qualifying free zone person. Once they become a qualifying free zone person, this is basically the same thing that we discussed earlier. Just free zone, Free zone person means company, a juridical person incorporated within the free zone. They will become a deemed qualifying free zone person, and their qualifying income will be subject to tax at 0%. The same thing we'll discuss. Now, this is a juridical person. As I mentioned, there are two classes of persons we have already discussed in the previous slide. There are two classes of person: qualifying free zone person. The possibility that the juridical person. If they are the juridical person, then 0% corporate tax will be applicable on the qualifying income. 9% tax will be applicable to the non-qualifying income. Another is now second misconception. People are asking, they are the qualifying free zone person, and up to 375,000 taxable income, they will be paying 0% corporate tax. No, nothing like this. This is another misconception. If you have a business on the mainland, yes, you can enjoy 0% relief up to 375,000 taxable income. But if you are a qualifying free zone person, this relief is not available to the qualifying free zone person, means their income up to 375,000 will not be subject to 0%. There are two different classes of income: qualifying income, non-qualifying income, straightforward for the qualifying free zone person. Qualifying income will be 0%. Non-qualifying income will be straightforward subject to tax at 9%. So there is no concept of 0% corporate tax on the taxable income of up to 375,000 for the qualifying free zone person. This is another misconception. I believe everyone will be clear regarding this. So qualifying free zone person, taxation is 0% on the qualifying income and 9% on the non-qualifying income. Juridical persons in the free zone, non-juridical persons in the free zone, we have already discussed. Non-juridical person in the free zone can be natural persons, sole establishment, unincorporated partnership. Up to 1 million dirham, they are exempt from the corporate tax. Beyond 1 million, they can enjoy a small business relief up to 3 million. And beyond that, they will be 375,000, 0%. Beyond that, they will be subject to taxable income will be subject to tax at 9%. So one more misconception, like qualifying free zone person cannot enjoy a small business leave, because as I mentioned earlier, a lot of people believe that their taxable income will be 375,000. They are based within the free zone. They are the qualifying free zone person. They will be able to enjoy the small business relief. No, this small business relief is not available to the qualifying free zone person. Juridical persons in the free zone. We have already discussed two types of person: natural person, juridical person. Juridical persons are deemed qualifying free zone. You are not liable to do anything to become a qualifying free zone person. By default, you will be presumed qualifying free zone person. Every juridical person is required to register. Now you are a qualifying free zone person, and you are not exempt from the corporate tax. Which businesses are exempt from the corporate tax? We will discuss this. If you are a qualifying free zone person, you are a deemed qualifying free zone person, your qualifying income is subject to tax at 0%. Non-qualifying income is subject to tax at 9%, means you are liable to register. It means every business, every juridical persons in the free zone is liable to register for VAT. This is another misconception. It should be over. So we cannot say, okay, I'm a free zone person, I'm not subject to corporate tax. What is the benefits of sitting in the free zone? We're not liable to pay corporate tax. We're not liable to register. Our income will not be subject to tax. No, these all are misconceptions. You need to come out of this. So if you are a juridical person, you are registered in the free zone, you are liable to register yourself for corporate tax. Simple. Only one exception is there. If you are a natural person, income is up to 1 million dirham, yes, you are exempt from corporate tax. Otherwise, you are liable to register for corporate tax. Even your whole income will be subject to tax at 0%. Your whole income is subject to tax at 0%. Still, you are liable to register for corporate tax. You are liable to submit a return as well. So to maintain, now we have agreed that juridical persons by default are deemed qualifying free zone person. Now you need to maintain that status as well. How will you maintain the status? Law says you are liable to fulfill 6 conditions. What are those 6 conditions? We'll be discussing in detail in our coming slides. So juridical person needs to maintain their qualifying free zone person status, and they need to meet 6 conditions that we'll be discussing in our coming slides. If the juridical person fails to meet any of these 6 conditions are there, and if you are fails to meet, if the qualifying free zone person fails to meet any of the 6 conditions, then for the current tax period and the remaining 4 tax period, the person will not become a qualifying free zone person. It will be treated like a company on the mainland. So the person will not be able to enjoy the 0% corporate tax relief on the qualifying income even. There is no concept of qualifying income. It will be treated exactly like a person sitting on the mainland. It will be exactly treated like this. So if the qualifying free zone person status is revoked, the free zone based juridical person will be treated like a mainland registered business. There will not be any difference then. Small business relief is not available for the qualifying free zone person that we have already discussed. You cannot say my income is up less than 3 million. I'm qualifying free zone person. I will be enjoying the qualifying small business relief. No, nothing. The relief is available like this to the businesses who are the qualifying free zone person. Taxable income of qualifying free zone person is subject to tax either 0% or 9%. There no concept of 0% corporate tax on the taxable income of up to 375,000 for the qualifying free zone person. Straightforward 0% or 9%. The revenue can be categorized. This is important. Basically, this classification is very important to classify which income needs to be considered while calculating the de minimis test, while applying the de minimis test. First of all, you need to classify your income into 4 categories. First category is exempt income. Second category is standard rated, which is a 9%. Third category is the qualifying income. Fourth category is the non-qualifying. These are the 4 categories of income for the qualifying free zone person. What is exempt income? If the qualifying free zone person has any branch out of the UAE, foreign branch, the qualifying free zone person has an option not to consider the revenue and related expenses of that branch, but they need to take approval from the Federal Tax Authority, FTA. This is the first exempt income of the qualifying free zone person. Like the one parent company is in Jafza. That parent company has a branch in UK, USA, anywhere across the globe. That branch, so the Jafza company can go to the FTA and request FTA for this branch. We didn't want to consider the revenue and related expenses. But if this provision will be applicable, this provision will be applicable across the board on all branches across the globe. Wherever that they have the branches, the same provision will be applicable. You cannot pick and choose, okay, this branch I will consider the revenue and expenses, this branch I will not consider the revenue and expenses. No, if you are availing this option, you are requesting FTA, then this provision will be applicable across the board and all branches will be treated like this. You will not be considering their income. You will not be considering their expenses. So this is the first category of exempt income, you can say, for the qualifying free zone person. Second, the qualifying free zone person, there is a possibility under the qualifying free zone person is getting any dividend from the juridical person. That will be exempt as well. Qualifying free zone person meeting the requirement of participation exemption, because there's some certain requirement. They need to minimum investment, minimum holding period 12 months, minimum tax 9%. The company in which they are making the investment, that company is not further investing in the shares at least 50%. These are the few conditions. If all these conditions are being met, then the income of the qualifying free zone person from the participation exemption will be exempt as well. So first of all, you need to bring the exempt income out of the total income. Remaining will be standard rated, qualifying income and non-qualifying income. The 4 incomes of the qualifying free zone person are subject to tax. Straightforward subject to tax. These 4 incomes are, these are given here. The revenue attributable to the foreign PE, the revenue attributable to the domestic PE, revenue from the immovable property, except one stream of the immovable property that we'll discuss, revenue from the intellectual property, except the qualifying income of the qualifying intellectual property. So these four incomes of the qualifying free zone person are straightforward subject to tax at 9%. So out of the total income, we have removed the income which is exempt. We have removed the income which is straightforward subject to tax at 9%. Remaining their income, the two tier types of income of their qualifying income and non-qualifying income. So whenever you are applying the de minimis criteria will be applicable only upon these incomes. Numerator and denominator, total will become a denominator and nominator will be non-qualifying income, this one. So these two income will be excluded while calculating the de minimis requirement. So we need to be very clear which income needs to be included to calculate the de minimis criteria. So total revenue, this is the total revenue. Four types of revenue that are total revenue. Out of this total revenue, we need to remove the exempt and standard rated revenue. Then it can be further qualifying and non-qualifying revenue will be the remaining income. Non-qualifying revenue, what is the non-qualifying revenue? This is the categories you can fall excluding activities. Free zone person who are not the ultimate beneficial recipient, means the qualifying free zone person making transaction with the other free zone person, but that other free zone person is not the beneficial recipient. So non-qualifying activity, if the qualifying free zone person is making any transaction with the non-free zone person, then the income that is being generated from the non-qualifying activities, that will be considered as the non-qualifying revenue as well. So remaining all will be qualifying revenue. So this is the basically four categories of income. These four categories income will be able to assess, okay, which income needs to be considered while applying the de minimis criteria. So first you need to eliminate two income, remaining will be two, that will be considered. Just that this income will be 0% corporate tax. This is the qualifying income. What is the qualifying income? Free zone person is the ultimate beneficiary, means qualifying free zone person is making any transaction with the other free zone person, and that other free zone person is the ultimate beneficial recipient of the goods and services. That will be considered my qualifying income. Revenue from the qualifying activity with the transaction is being made to the non-free zone person. And we know there are 14 qualifying activities. If the free zone person is making any transaction with the non-free zone person, that non-free zone person might be on the mainland, might be anywhere across the globe. But the activity or qualifying activity, if the activities are qualifying activity, that will be considered my qualifying income as well. So qualifying income from the commercial property, we know this, the commercial property is the property should be a commercial property, should be within the free zone. Transaction is being made with the other free zone. Property is not being used for accommodation or residential purposes. Property is being used exclusively for business purposes. If all these conditions are being satisfied, then we can say the income that is being generated from that commercial property will be considered qualifying income of the commercial property. Other than this, every income from the immovable property will be straightforward subject to tax at 9%. So here we can classify commercial property qualifying income, which will be subject to tax at 0%, and non-qualifying income straightforward subject to tax at 9%. In the same way, qualifying income from the qualifying intellectual property. This qualifying intellectual property, they said, we need to, first of all, we need to identify the intellectual property. Then we need to assess which intellectual property is the qualifying intellectual property, because there are some certain conditions. Once the income is being generated from the qualifying intellectual property, some portion of that income will be a qualifying income based upon the formula which has been given in the guide. Remaining income, even of the qualifying intellectual property, will be straightforward subject to tax at 9%. So we can say, other than qualifying income of the qualifying intellectual property, which is subject to tax at 0%, all income other than this qualifying income of the qualifying intellectual property will be straightforward subject to tax at 9%. This we were discussed in a previous slide, where we have mentioned some income will be straightforward subject to tax at 9%. Can you look into this? Revenue derived from the intellectual property. This is basically qualifying income. This is basically non-qualifying income of the intellectual property, straightforward subject to tax at 9%. Other than this immovable property, one stream, all will be subject to tax at 9%. This 9%, this 9%. So coming back to this, so what is 0%? Free zone is the ultimate free zone person is the ultimate beneficial recipient. Income is being generated, revenue is being generated from the non-free zone person, but from the qualifying activities. Qualifying income from the commercial property, where all conditions are being satisfied. Qualifying of the qualifying intellectual property. And fifth is the de minimis threshold, means the income will be less than 5% of the total revenue, or 5 million, whichever is lower. So that will be considered qualifying income. Other than this, every income will be subject to tax at 9%. So if I'm classifying this income, simply we can do the classification based upon this. This is my total revenue. This total revenue, this is exempt revenue. We have already discussed in detail. This is my taxable revenue. Out of this taxable revenue, some revenue is subject to tax at 9%. Four categories that were discussed earlier. Remaining will be subject to tax at 0%. This 0%, this is qualifying revenue will be straightforward subject to tax at 0%. Non-qualifying will be subject to tax at 0% as well. Now you can ask the question how the non-qualifying revenue can be subject to tax at 0%. The answer is very simple, because this non-qualifying revenue will be less than 5 million or 5% of this total revenue. This is the reason this non-qualifying revenue will be subject to tax at 0% as well. If this non-qualifying revenue is not meeting the de minimis criteria, then the qualifying free zone person will no longer remain the qualifying free zone person. It will be out, and the person will revoke the status of the qualifying free zone person for the current period and the next period, tax period. So this is the reason that the non-qualifying revenue of the qualifying free zone person will be subject to tax as well. The reason is because this revenue is under the de minimis threshold. If it would have not been under the de minimis threshold, then the person would have been out of the qualifying free zone person status, as I mentioned, for the current period and next 4 tax period. So just look into this example. This is the example I think we have discussed in our previous lecture as well, previous webinar as well. I'm repeating. So this is domestic P straightforward subject to tax at 9%. From rental income, Imla property located in a free zone to non-free zone person. Transaction is being made with the non-free zone person straightforward subject to tax at 9%. From transaction with other free zone person, now transactions are being made with the other free zone person, of which 200,000 relate to excluded activities. Excluded activities will fall under the non-qualifying revenue. This, it will fall here. Can you see this? Non-qualifying revenue. Here it will fall the excluded activities. So 200,000 is the excluded activity. Principally, it should not be 5%, more than 5% of the total revenue, or 5 million, whichever is lower. And remaining transaction is being made with the other free zone person. They are the beneficial recipient as well. That will be qualifying income. From transaction with the non-free zone person, of which area qualifying activities that are not excluded, qualifying activities, not excluded activities, it will be qualifying activities, 0%. For transaction with non-free zone person that are not qualifying activities, non-qualifying, then it will fall under the non-qualifying revenue. You can look into this. Non-qualifying activities with the non-free zone person. I believe everyone is very clear about it. Now, if I'm putting this, plugging these numbers into this diagram, this is my total revenue. This is 0%. There no exempt revenue given in this examples provided by the FTA in the guide. Remaining income is basically 19.80 million. That is total revenue. Out of this income is straightforward subject to tax at 9%. Remaining is my other revenue that can be classified non-qualifying, qualifying revenue. If I'm considering the non-qualifying revenue, here the non-qualifying revenue is 0.5, 0.2 plus 0.3, 0.5 divided by this. It should be 7.5, not 7.3. So 19.8 less 12.5. I think I am not changing. The previous webinar, it was the same thing as well. So 19.8 less 12.5, 7.3. The issue is 7.3, not 7.5. So this is correct. This is wrong. It should be 7.3. So 0.5, this 2.5 divided by 7.3, the answer is 6.675, means the de minimis threshold has been crossed. Once the de minimis threshold has been crossed, the person will not remain a qualifying free-zone person for the current tax period and the next 4 tax period. Now, they are asking the facts are same as given in example 5 of the guide, except 300,000 is from the other transaction with qualifying free-zone person is attributable to a company's is domestic P, straightforward subject to tax. Basically, what they are doing, they said 300,000 from transaction with non-free zone persons, which were qualifying activities. Now this income is being removed. This income is being subject to tax directly at 9%. So my at the end, my denominator has come down, because out of this 0.3 million has been reduced and 0.3 million has been added here. It has become straightforward subject to tax at 9%. My denominator has been reduced to 7. So 0.3, it has been reduced with 0.2 divided by, because that is already it was non-qualifying revenue. So 0.2 divided by 7, 0.2 divided by 7, 2.85. Now here you can see the de minimis criteria has met. Once the de minimis criteria has met, we can say, okay, this person exempt income. This income straightforward subject to tax at 9%. This whole income 0%. So we can say if this party is a qualifying free zone person, their income is subject to tax 9% and 0%. Rest of the income is exempt income. So this is the reason they are asking for the qualified free zone person. There are no concept of 0% corporate tax on the taxable income of 375,000. The concept is very straightforward and simple. 0% on the qualifying revenue, 9% on the non-qualifying revenue. That basically 9% on the non-qualifying revenue, which is straightforward subject to tax at 9%, because this non-qualifying revenue, this is under the threshold, it will fall under the qualifying income as well, which will be subject to tax at 0%. So these are the 6 conditions we discussed so many times. Not elected to be corporate tax, maintain adequate substance, compliance, transfer pricing, derives qualifying income, meet de minimis criteria, have already defined. If these conditions, any of these conditions is not being met, the person will not be qualifying free zone person for the current and next 4 tax period. So the qualifying free zone person has certain limitation. What are the limitations? Qualifying free zone person cannot enjoy small business relief, cannot part of the qualifying group, cannot become a part of the tax group, cannot enjoy the restructuring relief, cannot transfer the tax losses. This is the reason that the qualifying free zone person, there is a possibility might be they will opt and they will opt and they will get themselves taxed to enjoy these reliefs. So this is the reason that the guide, it has been given in the guide and the law as well. If the qualifying free zone person is opting to be subject to tax, then they cannot become a qualifying free zone person again in the current tax period and the next 4 tax period. You need to be careful while opting. You wanted to opt to be subject to tax or not. Otherwise, by default, as I discussed earlier, you will be assumed a qualifying free zone person. Just look into this example. Person has opted. Company G has determined that it doesn't want to be a qualifying free zone person for the period this to this. For the election to apply to the tax period, this company G would need to make this election up to the due date of filing of the tax return for the where such an election has been made on 30th September within 9 months from the end of the tax period. It would mean that the company G is not a qualifying free zone person and in 2024 and the 4 tax period. So for the current tax period and the next 4 tax period, the person will not be able to become a qualifying free zone person. Just one more example. Company H constantly follows the Gregorian calendar year and Company H, sorry for this. Company H, a qualifying free zone person, consistently follows the Gregorian calendar year at its tax period. During 2024 tax period, the company H fails to meet the de minimis requirement. 2024, the company has failed to meet the de minimis 6 condition, might be any of them. It would be treated as a qualifying free zone person. It would be treated as a qualifying free zone person that has failed to meet the criteria to be qualifying for. It would not be treated as a qualifying free zone person. It would not be treated as a qualifying free zone person if the person fails to meet to be a qualifying free zone person. Accordingly, company H would cease to be qualifying for region person starting from 1st Jan 2024 and the next 4 tax periods. So either you have opted, either you have failed to meet the conditions, you will not be able to enjoy the 0% corporate tax relief as a qualifying free zone person. Failing to qualify a qualifying free zone person in previous tax period, this is the similar example. You can go through this. Then the objective is same basically if you are not meeting the condition. Now, important thing in this example is now you have opted or you have failed to meet the conditions. If you have opted to be a qualified if you have opted not to be a qualifying free zone person, so you will not be a qualifying free zone person for the current tax period and next 4 tax period. By the end of the next 4 tax period, you will become automatically qualifying free zone person again, unless and until you are opting again that you don't want to become a qualifying free zone person. Means every time by the end of the current plus next 4 tax period, you will have to opt not to be a qualifying free zone person. And if you have not met the conditions in the current tax period, then you will not be a qualifying free zone person in the current tax period and next 4 tax period. By the end of the next 4 tax period, you will be assessed again. Have you met the 6 conditions of the qualifying free zone person? If you have not met again for the next 5 years, you will not be able to become a qualifying free zone person. So this is basically crux of this example. Qualifying free zone person, as we discussed, 6 conditions are there. These 6 conditions were discussed so many times. One of the conditions is you need to maintain the adequate substance. I'm not going into detail because I think we have already discussed 3-4 webinars on the qualifying free zone person. The one thing is important here. I just wanted to highlight that if you are in the business of qualifying intellectual property, you have an option to outsource the core income generating activities SIGA in the UAE to anybody, out of the UAE to non-related party. But for any other business, they cannot outsource out of the UAE. Even they cannot outsource out of the free zones or designated zone. This is the beauty. Basically, for the qualifying free zone person, if the qualifying free zone person is in the intellectual property business, they are developing any software, they are developing anything like intangible property, then they can outsource their core income generating activities out of the free zone or out of the designated zone within the UAE to any party, or they can outsource it to non-related party out of the UAE. But law says that it must be supervised. So this is the one thing which is very interesting. Rest everything is same. The qualifying free zone person needs to maintain the transfer pricing rules and regulations as well. We know this. The TP is applicable where the related parties or where the connected person. Related party, these are the different types of related parties given in the law. The partners in the same unincorporated partnership, natural person having 4th degree of kinship, natural person, juridical person, where under the common control, common ownership person and his PE, domestic or foreign, it will be considered a related party, a trustee, founders, who are the partners in the unincorporated partnership, they will be considered the related parties as well. And the connected persons, they are asking owner of the business, directors or officers of the business, or related party of the owner or director or officer, it will be considered connected person. So while doing any transaction, if the basically qualifying free zone person is doing any transaction with the related party or connected person, they need to follow the transfer pricing rules and regulations. This is another important condition that they need to meet. Then these are different methods. How can we apply that transfer pricing? How to apply the TP benchmarking? What should be the proper rate? These are different methods that have been given, and each method is applicable in a different scenario, depending upon the businesses, in which business they are, what are the conditions, a lot of ifs and buts. We need to be very wise while selecting a relevant method to apply the benchmarking. Then they need to maintain the documentation as well for the qualifying free zone person. This is the qualifying income of the qualifying free zone person. We have already discussed this in detail, so I'm not going into this. So this we have already spoken as well so many times. If the qualifying free zone person who is in this zone If this is a zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, we have classified the whole world into 4 zones. If this qualifying free zone person is making any transaction with other free zone who is a beneficial recipient, at the same free zone who is the beneficial recipient, it will become a qualifying income. Here, this is non-free zone. If the person is making any transaction with the non-free zone party, then it should be qualifying activity. It will be qualifying income. Otherwise, it will be considered a non-qualifying income. The qualifying intellectual property we discussed the sum that it can be classified qualifying intellectual property, non-qualifying intellectual property. The qualifying intellectual property can be further classified into qualifying income of the qualifying intellectual property can be further classified into 2 categories. Qualifying income of the qualifying intellectual property and non-qualifying income of the qualifying intellectual property. This income will be subject to tax at 0% and these both income will be subject to tax at 9%. We have already discussed this. This is the formula. How can we calculate the qualifying income of the qualifying intellectual property? Total income from the qualifying intellectual property. Just keep in mind, this total income is not from the intellectual property. This total income is from the qualifying intellectual property. So qualifying expenditure, it should be uplift of expenditure divided by overall expenditure of the qualifying intellectual property. This income will be qualifying income. Rest all income, this portion basically. This will be straightforward subject to tax. This will be straightforward subject to tax at 9%. This will be 0%. Then commercial property we have already discussed. The property must be in the free zone here or here. Transaction is being made with the free zone person who is based here or here. Property is not, this is a commercial property. Property is not being used for residential accommodation purpose. Property is exclusively being used for commercial purposes, business purposes. Then any transaction made with the other free zone person will be qualifying income. Otherwise, if the property is here, if the property is here, if the property is here, which is not being used for exclusively business, even the hotels who are based here, which are based here, hotels that are based here, these are not exclusively being used for business purposes, or these are not being used for, these are being used for accommodation purposes. It will be straightforward subject to tax at 9%. These are the excluded activities. Excluded activity revenue from the excluded activity will fall under the non-qualifying income, but it should not be more than 5 million or 5% to remain as a qualifying free zone person. These are the qualifying activities we have already discussed. If the qualifying free zone person is making any transaction with the non-free zone person, might be the person anywhere across the globe, income from these activities will be considered qualifying income, and rest of the income will be considered non-qualifying income. And this non-qualifying income will not be straightforward subject to tax at 9%. It will fall under the qualifying income will fall under the qualifying bracket. Non-qualifying income, it should be less than the threshold, 5% or 5 million, whichever is lower. Thank you very much. This is over from my side. If you have any question, you are most welcome. You don't have any question? I believe if we're going back to the basically misconceptions that I have highlighted in the very beginning, that just to recap what I will discuss basically, these are the basic misconception. If we're going into the misconception, see, CT is applicable to the free zone business, not applicable. We have already decided CT will be applicable to every juridical person. They will be liable to register. CT will be applicable even to the natural person if their revenue in the Gregorian calendar is less than is more than 1 million. 0% up to 375,000. 0% up to 375,000 and 9% to, this is again misconception. Straightforward tax is 0% and 9% for the qualifying free zone person. No exemption up to 375,000. Income in less than 3 million, business will exempt 30. No, juridical person, they cannot enjoy small business relief. Which income is straightforward subject to tax at 9%? We discussed four types of income are straightforward subject to tax at 9%. Remaining will be qualifying income, which will be subject to tax at 0%. What businesses needs to do the become, how the businesses can become a qualifying free zone person? We said it will be deemed by default, you will be considered a qualifying free zone person. Which income should be included in a de minimis calculation? We have a detailed exercise along with the examples to know which income should be included while calculating the de minimis percentage. Which free zones are designated zone? We have not addressed this question, but FTA says you need to go through the cabinet decision related to the specifically for the VAT. What are the designated zone for the VAT? It will be assumed same for the corporate tax as well. But still, if you have any confusion, you can drop an email. You can speak to the relevant free zone authority. They will tell you either they are falling as a they have been categorized as a designated zone or not. No adequate substance. People still believe 0%. No, this is not possible. You will have to maintain the adequate substance. It doesn't matter in the free zone or designated, in the distribution business in the designated zone, otherwise in the free zone if you wanted to enjoy the 0% corporate tax relief. We have addressed all these questions. I believe that a lot of other misconceptions have been cleared as well. If you have any question, as I mentioned, you can just drop me an email, you can drop me a message. I'm always here to support. So people recap the qualifying free zone activities. Please recap the qualifying free zone activities. Qualifying free zone activities, okay, we'll see in our next webinar because we have already spoken. You can go through on our YouTube channel. You will find the full webinar on the qualifying free zone activities. But I'll try to recap because after issuance of the guide, I have not done it, but I'll try to do in the future. One more, when you have qualified income and non-qualified income, okay, you need to allocate expenses. How subjective that can become an open huge amount of discussion. There are no subject, man. They are very clear. They are asking you need to have the proper allocation key. If you have a proper allocation key, you can allocate it. And allocation key, number of people, square foot, area, ABCD, units, whatever the allocation key, the lot of allocation key, you must have a justification. What the reason? How are you allocating the expenses based upon the allocation key? You can allocate the expenses. Okay, guys, thank you very much and have a lovely evening. Thank you and nice to speak to everyone and stay in touch. We'll meet again after 1 week. Take care. Thank you. Bye bye.